Griffin and Emma return from collecting firewood to find their campsite completely empty. The 3 large tents are gone, the picnic table cleared, both SUVs vanished. No sign of Griffin's parents, his brother Derek's sister-in-law Marissa, or their twin boys. Complete silence except for wind through pine trees. Griffin's phone shows no signal. On the wooden picnic table sits a single white envelope with his name. Inside, a handwritten note in his mother's careful script. "Griffin, this is for the best. Trust me. Take care of Emma. Love, always, Mom." The wilderness stretches endlessly in every direction. I stood frozen, clutching that piece of paper, while my 10-year-old daughter, Emma, dropped her armload of kindling. The small sticks scattered across the dirt where our family's camp chairs had been just 2 hours earlier. "Daddy, where is everyone?" Emma's voice carried that specific tone children use when they sense something terrible, but cannot name it yet. I read the note again, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into sense. My mother's handwriting was unmistakable, the same careful cursive she had used on birthday cards and grocery lists my entire life. But the message felt like a transmission from an alien planet. They went back to town for supplies. I managed my voice sounding hollow even to myself. "We'll need to wait here until they return." Emma looked around the clearing with growing confusion. "But where are our sleeping bags? Where's my stuffed elephant?" I forced myself to conduct a methodical search of the area, though my legs felt unsteady. The fire pit we had all gathered around for breakfast was cold and scattered. Every tent stake had been pulled from the ground. Even the coolers were gone. I found myself checking and rechecking the same spots as if my brother's green tent might materialize behind a tree through sheer force of will. Emma followed me like a shadow, her initial confusion hardening into fear. "Daddy, why would they take all our stuff if they were just going to the store?" I knelt beside the fire pit and found it stone-cold ashes dispersed. This was not a quick departure. Someone had spent considerable time cleaning and packing everything. My mind began cataloging what we had left Emma's small purple backpack containing fruit snacks, a juice box, and her school water bottle. My wallet and car keys now useless. The clothes we wore. Nothing else. We're going to have an adventure. I told Emma, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "We'll camp under the stars tonight, just you and me." But privately, I began calculating. We were at least 15 miles from the main road through rough mountain terrain. The September nights in Colorado dropped into the 40s. Emma wore only a lightweight sweater over her t-shirt. As daylight faded, I gathered dried leaves and pine needles while Emma helped arrange them into a makeshift bed beside a large boulder that would block wind. From her backpack, I retrieved her emergency poncho, a flimsy plastic thing her school required for field trips. It would have to serve as our shelter. "This is like the pioneers," Emma said gamely, though she shivered against my side as darkness fell. I sat awake that entire night, listening to every rustle and crack in the forest. Around midnight, I heard something large moving through the underbrush nearby. My heart hammered as I strained to identify the sound. When silence returned, I noticed something else that made my blood run cold. During our daylight search, I had focused on finding our missing belongings. But now, in the moonlight, I could clearly see tire tracks in the soft dirt near where our vehicles had been parked. These tracks were wider and deeper than anything our family had driven up the mountain. Someone else had been here. Someone with a larger vehicle, possibly a truck. I waited until dawn to investigate further. The tracks led away from our campsite in the opposite direction from the main access road. Someone had deliberately chosen an alternate route, one that would avoid other campers or park rangers. As the sun crested the tree line, I walked the perimeter of our former camp one more time. That's when I found a second note, hidden under a rock near where Derek's tent had stood. I recognized my brother's handwriting immediately. Count to 10 slowly and think about what you've done. Beneath Derek's note lay several printed pages that made my stomach clench with dread. Email printouts dated 2 weeks ago. The subject line read, "The Griffin Problem. Final Solution." I scanned the email chain with growing horror. Messages between Derek, my parents, and someone named Robert Chen in the legal department at Derek's company. References to inheritance complications, and custody arrangements, and timeline for intervention. This was not a spontaneous decision made during our camping trip. My family had been planning my abandonment for weeks. Emma stirred in our makeshift bed, and I quickly folded the emails and tucked them into my pocket. But my mind raced as I began to grasp the magnitude of what was happening. This was not neglect or a family disagreement gone wrong. This was deliberate, calculated. They wanted something from me, and they believed leaving me stranded with my daughter would somehow force me to give it to them. Or worse, they wanted me gone entirely. The morning chill bit through our thin clothes as I helped Emma wake up. She looked pale and smaller somehow, curled under that inadequate poncho. "Daddy, I'm really hungry," she whispered. I opened her juice box and split her remaining fruit snacks between us, trying to make the portions look generous rather than desperate. We had perhaps one day's worth of food between us. "We need to find the trail markers," I told her. "There's a system in these woods that will help us get home. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was fighting against." By full daylight, I spread Derek's emails on a flat rock and studied them with the methodical focus that had served me well in my IT career. Each message revealed another layer of betrayal. The first email, sent 18 days ago, came from Derek to my parents. "Griffin's divorce settlement gives Sandra grounds to challenge custody if we can demonstrate instability. Robert says timing is critical. My ex-wife, Sandra." My stomach dropped as I remembered her increasingly aggressive texts over the past month, demanding changes to our custody arrangement. She wanted Emma full-time and had recently hired an expensive family attorney. Another email from my mother to Derek. "Are you certain this is necessary? Griffin has always been a good father." Derek's response chilled me. Dad's partnership agreement has the morality clause. Griffin abandoning his responsibilities voids his ownership percentage. The Martha inheritance money reverts to family trust if Griffin is deemed unfit. This solves multiple problems simultaneously. Martha. My childless aunt, who had passed away 3 months ago, leaving me a considerable inheritance that Derek had openly resented. At her funeral, he'd made bitter comments about how some people get everything handed to them, while others work for every dollar. I thought back to our family dinner 8 weeks ago. Derek had peppered me with questions that seemed intrusive at the time, but now revealed their true purpose. How was Emma adjusting to the divorce? Was I managing my finances responsibly? Had I considered therapy to deal with the stress? "Daddy, what are you reading?" Emma approached cautiously, clutching her empty juice box. "Just some old paperwork," I said, folding the emails away. "How are you feeling this morning?" "My tummy hurts and I'm cold." I helped her put on my jacket, which hung nearly to her knees. We needed water, food, and shelter in that order. About 300 yards downhill, I could hear the sound of running water. The stream was clear and fast-moving, probably safe to drink after boiling. But we had no matches, no lighter, no way to start a fire. I filled our water bottles anyway, and began teaching Emma how to purify water using makeshift filters made from clothing and sand. While she practiced the technique, I climbed a small ridge to check for cell phone reception. Nothing. But the elevated view revealed something encouraging: a series of orange markers on distant trees, the kind used to mark hiking trails. "Emma, we're going on a hike," I announced when I returned. "There's a trail system that might lead us toward other campers." As we gathered our few belongings, Emma found something wedged behind a tree near our original campsite. A disposable camera, the kind people used for underwater photos, or when they didn't want to risk expensive equipment. "Is this ours?" she asked. I examined the camera. 27 exposures, all used. This was not ours, but someone had left it deliberately where we would find it. With growing unease, I slipped the camera into my pocket alongside Derek's emails. We followed the stream downhill toward the orange trail markers, Emma's small hand gripping mine. The terrain grew rougher, requiring us to navigate around fallen logs and loose rocks. After 2 hours of hiking, we reached the first trail marker. The metal placard confirmed my hopes: Wilderness Trail System, mile marker 7. Below that, smaller text indicated Ranger Station 4.2 miles, with an arrow pointing east. 4 miles through mountain terrain while carrying a tired child. In our current condition, that represented 6 or 7 hours of difficult hiking. But it was achievable. "Can we rest here?" Emma asked. She had been brave all morning, but exhaustion showed in her face. While Emma napped against a sun-warmed boulder, I climbed higher to attempt cell phone contact again. At the crest of a small hill, my phone suddenly showed 1 bar of signal for approximately 30 seconds. During that brief window, I saw 17 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. The voicemail notification showed 12 new messages, but the signal died before I could access them. However, the caller ID had displayed enough information to make my blood freeze. Hartley and Associates Family Law. Derek had already set legal proceedings in motion. When I returned to Emma, she was awake and holding the disposable camera. "Daddy, can we see what pictures are on here?" "When we get home, sweetheart." But, privately, I suspected those photos would reveal yet another aspect of my family's betrayal. Nothing about our situation was accidental. Every detail had been planned, including leaving evidence behind. We resumed hiking toward the ranger station, but Emma's pace slowed considerably. By late afternoon, she was stumbling with fatigue and hunger. I carried her on my back for the final mile, my own strength depleting rapidly. Just before sunset, we crested a small hill and sawed a wooden structure that looked like an abandoned ranger outpost. No vehicles, no signs of recent activity, but 4 solid walls and a roof. Inside, we found basic emergency supplies, sleeping bags, canned food matches, and a first aid kit. A handwritten logbook indicated the station was maintained by volunteers and used occasionally by emergency personnel. Emma fell asleep immediately in one of the sleeping bags after eating half a can of soup. I lit a small fire in the station's wood stove, and finally had light to examine the disposable camera more carefully. The camera had been deliberately scratched on one side with initials I recognized: DM. Derek Mitchell, using his middle name as he always did when signing official documents. But it was the weight of the camera that confirmed my suspicions. This camera contained evidence, and Derek had planted it for me to find. As Emma slept safely beside the fire, I climbed the hill above the ranger station one more time. At the peak, my phone connected briefly to a stronger signal. This time, I managed to access one voicemail message. The automated voice chilled me. This message is for Griffin Walsh. This is Hartley and Associates Family Law. Your brother, Derek Walsh, has filed an emergency petition for custody of Emma Walsh, claiming you have mentally deteriorated and disappeared with the child. The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Please contact us immediately. Tomorrow. Derek had timed this abandonment to coincide with a custody hearing I knew nothing about. While I struggled to survive in the wilderness with my daughter, he would be in court painting me as an unfit father who had vanished without explanation. But Derek had made one crucial mistake. He had left evidence of his planning, and I was still alive to use it against him. I woke before dawn to find Emma burning with fever. Her forehead felt dangerously hot, and she shivered uncontrollably despite the sleeping bag and my jacket layered over her small frame. "Daddy, everything hurts," she whispered, her voice weak and raspy. My daughter had been drinking stream water despite my makeshift filtration attempts. Whatever bacteria or parasites she had ingested were now wreaking havoc on her system. I had basic first aid knowledge from my time coaching her soccer team, but this was beyond anything I could handle with the limited supplies in the ranger station. I used every method I could think of to reduce her fever. Cold compresses made from stream water and clean clothing. Small sips of cooled boiled water to prevent dehydration. I even opened our remaining can of soup and fed her tiny spoonfuls of broth, though she could barely keep anything down. While Emma drifted in and out of feverish sleep, my mind kept returning to the timeline Derek had orchestrated. Today was the custody hearing. Right now, at this very moment, my brother was sitting in a family courtroom, explaining to a judge why I was an unfit father. I could picture the scene perfectly. Derek, dressed in one of his expensive business suits, presenting evidence of my mental instability. My parents nodding sadly as they corroborated his story. Perhaps even Sandra convinced by Derek's promises to help her gain full custody. "Your Honor," Derek would say, "Griffin has become increasingly erratic since his divorce. Yesterday, he insisted on taking Emma into the wilderness despite bad weather warnings. When the family tried to intervene, he became violent and threatened us. We were forced to leave for our own safety, and Griffin has since disappeared with the child." The story was plausible enough to convince a judge, especially with no contradiction from my side. But as I sat beside Emma's makeshift bed, I began to understand something Derek had not anticipated. He needed me to look desperate and broken when I eventually emerged from the wilderness. His plan required me to return defeated, willing to accept whatever terms he offered in exchange for Emma's safety. Derek had always underestimated my capacity for strategic thinking. I left Emma sleeping safely in the ranger station and hiked to the communication ridge one more time. The cell signal was stronger in the early morning, and I managed to place 2 brief calls before losing connection. First, I called my ex-wife, Sandra. The call went to voicemail, but I left a carefully worded message. "Sandra, this is Griffin. I'm camping with Emma as planned. If Derek has contacted you about custody changes, please wait until I return before making any decisions. I'll have important information to share with you about his motivations." Second, I called the family law office and left a message for the attorney handling Derek's petition. "This is Griffin Walsh. I'm currently on a pre-planned camping trip with my daughter Emma. We're safe and will return as scheduled. Any claims that I've disappeared or that Emma is in danger are false. I request postponement of any proceedings until I can appear in person with documentation." Both messages were brief due to signal limitations, but they served a crucial purpose. They established a record that I was capable of rational communication and was not hiding or fleeing with Emma. When I returned to the station, Emma was awake but still feverish. Her condition was not improving, and I faced a terrible decision. Carrying her out to civilization in her current state could be dangerous, but staying here while she grew sicker was equally risky. As I debated our options, Emma made a discovery that changed everything. "Daddy, there are pictures inside this table," she said weakly, pointing to an old desk drawer that had been partially open. Inside the drawer, I found a collection of Polaroid photographs and handwritten notes. The photos showed various camping groups that had used this ranger station over the years. But it was the handwritten guest log that made my heart race. An entry from 3 weeks ago signed D. Walsh. "Scouting area for family trip. Excellent location for privacy. No cell service in valleys, but good reception on ridge. Discussed local emergency procedures with owner." Derek had been here. He had personally investigated this location and planned our abandonment route. But more importantly, the log entry mentioned an owner. This was not an abandoned station. Someone maintained this property. I flipped through more pages and found contact information for Tom Bradley, a retired police sergeant, who apparently owned and maintained this station for emergency use. His phone number was listed along with a note. "For true emergencies only. Landline in station connects directly to my home." I searched the station more thoroughly and found the landline phone mounted on the back wall behind a cabinet. When I lifted the receiver, I heard a dial tone. My hands shook as I dialed Tom Bradley's number. "Bradley here," a gruff voice answered after 2 rings. "Mr. Bradley, my name is Griffin Walsh. I'm at your ranger station with my sick daughter. We need help, but there's something you need to know about how we got here." I explained our situation quickly, focusing on the key facts: my family had abandoned us. Emma was ill with fever, and I had evidence of a conspiracy involving planned abandonment and legal manipulation. Tom Bradley listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked one question. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" "Because my brother Derek was at your station 3 weeks ago, and he signed your guest log under his real name. He wrote that he discussed emergency procedures with you. I can prove he planned this abandonment in advance." A long pause. Then, "Son, I remember your brother." Tall fellow asked a lot of specific questions about how long someone could survive lost in these woods. I thought he was writing some kind of survival manual. "You're saying he was planning to strand people here. He was planning to strand me and my daughter here. And while we struggle to survive, he's in court right now trying to take custody of Emma by claiming I'm mentally unstable." "Stay exactly where you are," Tom said firmly. "I'm coming up there with medical supplies and a whole lot of questions for your brother." But Tom's next words revealed information that made Derek's plan even more sinister than I had realized. "Mr. Walsh, your brother asked me very specific questions about survival times and search protocols. He wanted to know how long the Park Service typically waits before declaring someone dead, rather than just missing. That's not the kind of question someone asks if they're planning a rescue." Tom Bradley arrived at his station 2 hours later, driving a modified pickup truck equipped for mountain rescue operations. He was a weathered man in his 60s, with intelligent eyes and the calm competence of someone who had spent decades handling crises. The first thing he did was examine Emma, who was still feverish but coherent. From his extensive first aid kit, he produced medication to reduce her fever and electrolyte packets to combat dehydration. "She'll be fine," he assured me after checking her temperature and pulse. "Probably picked up giardia from the stream. Unpleasant, but not life-threatening with proper treatment. While Emma rested, Tom and I sat at the station's small table, and I showed him everything: Derek's emails, the planted camera, the timeline of the custody hearing, and my mother's note. Tom studied each piece of evidence with the methodical attention of a trained investigator. When he finished, his expression was grim. "Son, this isn't just abandonment. What your family did constitutes kidnapping, child endangerment, and conspiracy. Your brother has committed multiple felonies." But as Tom reviewed Derek's emails more carefully, he uncovered details I had missed in my initial reading. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a message from Derek to someone named R. Chen in the legal department. "Your brother is discussing something called inheritance reassignment under incapacity provisions and business partnership dissolution due to abandonment of duties." The full scope of Derek's plan became clear as Tom explained what he was seeing in the legal language. Derek was not simply trying to take custody of Emma or embarrass me. He was systematically dismantling my entire financial life. Through his corporate connections, Derek had discovered that my Aunt Martha's inheritance included a provision that the money would revert to a family trust if the primary beneficiary was declared legally incapacitated or failed to claim it within 6 months. By having me declared mentally unfit, Derek could access not just the inheritance but also force dissolution of my 30% partnership in our father's business. "How much money are we talking about?" Tom asked. "The inheritance was $200,000, I said. "My business partnership is worth probably another $150,000 on paper." "So, your brother is trying to steal over $300,000 by framing you as an unfit father and leaving you to die in the wilderness." The word "die" hung in the air between us. Tom's expression told me he meant it literally. "Mr. Walsh, let me show you something your brother probably doesn't realize I documented." Tom retrieved a security camera from his truck and showed me video footage from 3 weeks earlier. The camera had captured Derek's entire visit to the station, including conversations Tom had recorded without Derek's knowledge. On the small screen, I watched my brother asking Tom detailed questions about the area's geography, weather patterns, and how long someone could realistically survive with minimal supplies. But most damning was Derek's final question, recorded clearly on audio. If someone did get lost in this area, how long would it take before search and rescue gave up and declared them dead rather than missing? Tom's voice on the recording. "Well, if they went missing without a trace and we couldn't find any sign after 2 weeks of searching, the assumption would be that they died of exposure or injury. After 30 days, it becomes a recovery mission rather than a rescue." Derek's response chilled me. 30 days, that's good information for my research. Tom paused the video and looked at me directly. "Your brother was not planning to rescue you, Mr. Walsh. He was calculating how long he needed to wait before having you declared dead and inheriting everything." The enormity of Derek's betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My own brother had been willing to let Emma and me die slowly of exposure and starvation. He had calculated our deaths as an acceptable cost for financial gain. But Tom wasn't finished revealing the extent of the conspiracy. "There's something else," he said, pulling out a laptop computer. "After your brother's visit, I got curious about him. Did some research using my old contacts in law enforcement. Tom's investigation had uncovered financial records showing Derek was in serious debt due to failed business investments and a gambling problem his family knew nothing about. Derek owed approximately $200,000 to various creditors and was facing possible bankruptcy. Your inheritance money would have solved all his problems," Tom explained. "But he needed you out of the picture permanently to access it. As we talked, Emma woke up feeling significantly better thanks to Tom's medication. She listened quietly as Tom explained that we were safe now, and that some adults had made very bad choices that we were going to fix together. Uncle Derek left us here on purpose. Emma asked her young mind, struggling to process the betrayal. Yes, sweetheart, I said gently. But we're going to make sure he can never hurt anyone like this again. Tom's landline rang, and he answered it with a look of satisfaction. After a brief conversation, he hung up and turned to us with news that proved Derek's plan was already unraveling. That was my friend Captain Martinez at the County Sheriff's Department. Turns out your ex-wife Sandra called them this morning with some very interesting information. According to Tom, Sandra had been having second thoughts about her agreement to support Derek's custody petition. When Derek failed to produce me for the scheduled court hearing, she had grown suspicious and contacted law enforcement. Sandra told the police that your brother had approached her weeks ago with detailed plans about discrediting you as a father, Tom said. She's prepared to testify that Derek offered her money from your inheritance in exchange for supporting his custody claim. Derek's carefully constructed timeline was falling apart. Instead of appearing in court as a concerned family member worried about my mental state, he was now under investigation for fraud and conspiracy. But Tom's next revelation showed just how thoroughly Derek had underestimated the consequences of his actions. The family court judge postponed the custody hearing and ordered an immediate welfare check when you didn't appear. Tom explained. When the police couldn't locate you or Emma Derek's story about you having a mental breakdown, started looking like evidence of foul play instead of concerned family intervention. Derek had expected to control the narrative by having me declared missing and unstable. Instead, his elaborate plan had triggered a criminal investigation with him as the primary suspect. Tom began making phone calls to coordinate our next steps. The plan was simple but devastating for Derek. We would return to civilization with documented evidence of the conspiracy medical records of Emma's condition, and Tom's security footage proving Derek had planned the abandonment weeks in advance. But first, Tom wanted to set one more trap for my brother. Your brother doesn't know you've contacted anyone, Tom said. He's expecting you to stumble out of the woods, desperate and broken, ready to accept whatever terms he offers. Instead, we're going to give him exactly what he deserves. Tom's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of immediately revealing that we were safe and had evidence of Derek's conspiracy, we would let Derek continue believing his plan was working while we built an airtight legal case against him. Your brother has been monitoring police scanners and search and rescue frequencies, Tom explained as he organized our evidence on his secure computer system. He's been tracking the official search efforts to make sure they don't find you too quickly. We can use his own surveillance against him. While Emma napped, recovering fully from her illness thanks to Tom's medical supplies, I recorded detailed video testimony on Tom's camera equipment. The testimony documented our abandonment, chronologically included all the evidence we had discovered, and provided context about Derek's financial motives. Tom also helped me contact my attorney, Janet Morrison, using his secure landline. Janet had been trying to reach me for days after receiving word about Derek's custody petition. Griffin, thank God, Janet said when she heard my voice. Derek's been telling everyone that you've had some kind of breakdown and disappeared with Emma, but something about his story doesn't add up. I explained everything to Janet while Tom took notes. As a family law attorney, Janet immediately understood the legal implications of Derek's actions. This is conspiracy fraud, kidnapping, and child endangerment, she said. But we need to be strategic about how we proceed. Derek's already filed legal documents making specific claims about your mental state. If we just show up and accuse him of abandoning you, he'll claim you're having paranoid delusions. Janet proposed a coordinated approach. She would file emergency motions with the family court while Tom contacted law enforcement. Meanwhile, I would call Sandra to confirm her willingness to testify about Derek's bribery attempts. When I reached Sandra, her relief was audible. Griffin Derek told me you'd taken Emma on some kind of survival camping trip and refused to come back, she said. He showed me text messages that he claimed were from you saying you were going to disappear with Emma rather than share custody with me. Did you save those messages? Yes, and I forwarded them to the police this morning because something felt wrong about them. The language didn't sound like you at all. Sandra's cooperation was crucial because she had physical evidence of Derek's deception. The text messages he had fabricated were sent from a number that was not my phone, creating a clear trail of fraud. But Sandra also revealed information that showed Derek's plan was even more elaborate than we had realized. Griffin Derek approached me 6 weeks ago before your camping trip was even planned, she said. He knew specific details about your work schedule, your financial situation, and even Emma's school calendar. He'd been researching your life for months. This timeline proved Derek's conspiracy had begun long before our camping trip. He had been systematically gathering information and building his case while pretending to maintain normal family relationships with me. As we coordinated our legal response, Tom received a radio call that revealed Derek's current location and activities. Tom Bradley here. He answered on his CB radio. Tom, this is Ranger Johnson at Park Headquarters. We've got a civilian here asking about search protocols for missing hikers. Claims his brother and niece are lost in your sector. Want me to patch him through to you? Tom looked at me with grim satisfaction. Derek had come to the Park Service to establish his public cover story as a concerned family member. Tell him I'm coordinating search efforts from my station, Tom replied. Ask him to meet me there in 2 hours with detailed information about when he last saw the missing persons. Derek was walking directly into our trap. While we waited for Derek's arrival, Tom helped me understand exactly how we would handle the confrontation. The key was to let Derek incriminate himself further before revealing that we had evidence of his conspiracy. Your brother expects to find you either dead or broken, Tom said. When he sees that you're healthy and well-prepared, he's going to panic. People make mistakes when they panic. Tom set up multiple recording devices throughout his station, including hidden cameras that would capture Derek's reaction when he realized his plan had failed. As a retired police officer, Tom knew exactly how to collect evidence that would stand up in court. Emma now fully recovered, and understanding that this was about justice rather than revenge, helped us prepare by staying hidden in Tom's truck during Derek's visit. She would be safe, and could serve as a witness if needed, but Derek would not know she was there. As the appointed time approached, I found myself feeling surprisingly calm. For days, I had been reacting to Derek's manipulations, struggling to survive while he controlled the narrative. Now, finally, I was in control. Tom's radio crackled with an incoming message from the park entrance. Tom, this is Ranger Johnson. Your visitor just arrived. He's driving a black pickup truck and seems pretty anxious about the search efforts. Send him up, Tom replied. And, Johnson, keep a unit standing by at the entrance. We might need backup. Through the station window, I watched Derek's truck climbing the rough access road. My brother was coming to check on his handiwork, expecting to find either our bodies or evidence that we had died attempting to reach safety. Instead, he was about to discover that his victims had become his prosecutors. Tom positioned me near the back of the station where I would be visible, but not immediately obvious when Derek entered. We wanted to capture his genuine reaction when he realized I was alive and well. "Remember," Tom said quietly, "let him talk first. Give him enough rope to hang himself." Derek's truck pulled up outside, and through the window I saw my brother step out. He was dressed in hiking clothes and carried a backpack, maintaining his cover as a concerned family member participating in search efforts. But there was something in his posture that revealed his true state of mind. Derek moved like a man checking on a crime scene, not like someone desperately hoping to find missing family members alive. Tom opened the station door and greeted Derek with professional courtesy. "Mr. Walsh, I presume I understand you're looking for your missing brother and niece." Derek's response would determine whether he continued lying or attempted to salvage his crumbling conspiracy. Either way, this confrontation would end with Derek facing the consequences of what he had tried to do to Emma and me. Derek entered Tom's station with the confident bearing of someone who believed he controlled the situation. His hiking outfit was obviously new, purchased specifically for this performance, and his concerned expression looked carefully practiced. "Mr. Bradley, thank you for meeting me," Derek said, setting down his pristine backpack. "I'm desperately worried about my brother Griffin and his daughter Emma. They've been missing for 3 days now." Tom nodded sympathetically, while subtly activating the recording equipment positioned around the room. "Tell me exactly when you last saw them." "We were on a family camping trip." Derek began launching into a detailed fabrication. "Griffin has been struggling since his divorce, drinking more than usual, making erratic decisions. When we woke up the second morning, he and Emma were just gone. Left behind a rambling note about needing space and taking Emma somewhere safe." I listened from my position near the back window, marveling at Derek's ability to lie so smoothly. His story was plausible and delivered with apparent emotion. "Did you bring the note?" Tom asked. Derek hesitated just slightly. "The police have it as evidence. But Mr. Bradley, I'm terrified that Griffin might hurt himself or Emma. He's been talking about how everyone would be better off without him. This was pure fabrication designed to support the mental instability narrative Derek had been building for weeks. But he was also setting up a potential murder-suicide explanation if our bodies were eventually found." Tom played his role perfectly, asking follow-up questions that encouraged Derek to elaborate on his lies. "What exactly made you think your brother was having mental health issues? He's been obsessed with the idea that our family is plotting against him," Derek said, warming to his theme. "Paranoid delusions about people stealing his money trying to take Emma away from him. We tried to get him help, but he refused treatment." Derek was inadvertently describing his own conspiracy, while framing it as my paranoid fantasy. The irony would have been amusing if the stakes were not so serious. "Mr. Bradley, I need to ask you directly," Derek continued. "How long can someone survive in these woods? My parents are hoping Griffin will come to his senses and bring Emma home, but I'm afraid they're both going to die out there." This was the moment we had been waiting for. Derek was repeating the same questions he had asked 3 weeks earlier, inadvertently proving his advanced planning. Tom glanced toward my position and nodded slightly. "Time for the revelation. Well, Mr. Walsh," Tom said slowly, "I can answer your survival question quite specifically. Based on my observations over the past 3 days, someone with basic wilderness knowledge and determination can not only survive but actually thrive in these conditions." Derek looked puzzled. "I'm sorry, what observations?" "The observations I've made while helping your brother and niece recover from the situation you created when you abandoned them." I stepped forward from the shadows and Derek's face went through a remarkable transformation. Confusion, shock, disbelief, and, finally, naked fear, as he realized the magnitude of his exposure. "Hello, Derek," I said calmly. Surprised to see me alive, Derek's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. His carefully rehearsed concerned brother performance crumbled completely. "Griffin, thank God you're okay." He finally managed, but his voice cracked with panic. "Where have you been? We've been searching everywhere." "We've been right here," I replied. "Reading your emails, watching your security footage, learning about your gambling debts and your plan to steal my inheritance by leaving Emma and me to die." Derek's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." Tom stepped forward with a folder containing printed emails and photographs. "Mr. Walsh, we have documented evidence of your conspiracy, including your reconnaissance visit to this station 3 weeks ago, where you asked specific questions about how long it takes for missing persons to be declared dead." "That's impossible," Derek stammered. "I've never been here before." Tom activated his laptop and showed Derek the security footage of his previous visit. On screen, Derek was clearly visible, asking detailed questions about survival times and search protocols. Derek watched the video with growing desperation. His entire conspiracy was unraveling in real time, and he could see the evidence piling up against him. "This is all a misunderstanding," Derek said weakly. "Griffin, you've been under a lot of stress. Maybe you're misinterpreting things." "Am I misinterpreting the text messages you sent to Sandra pretending to be me?" I asked. "Or the custody petition you filed claiming I'd had a mental breakdown? Or perhaps I'm misinterpreting the email where you calculated how to access my inheritance money once I was declared legally incapacitated." Each revelation hit Derek like a physical blow. He had not anticipated that his victims would be able to reconstruct his entire plan with documented evidence. But Derek was not finished. In his desperation, he made one final attempt to control the situation. "Griffin, even if some of this looks bad, you have to understand my position," he said, his voice taking on a pleading tone. "You've always had everything handed to you. The inheritance from Aunt Martha, your business success, Emma's love. Some of us have had to work for everything we have." "Work," I replied. "You mean like working to steal money from your own brother? Working to traumatize your 10-year-old niece? Working to frame me for child abandonment while you planned to let us die of exposure?" Derek's mask slipped completely. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. I owe money to people who don't negotiate. I needed that inheritance to survive, and you were just going to waste it on Emma's college fund and your comfortable life." Tom and I exchanged glances. Derek had just confessed to his financial motivations while simultaneously admitting that he believed Emma and I deserved to die for his convenience. At that moment, Tom's radio crackled with an incoming message. "Tom, this is Sheriff Martinez. We're at your location with backup units. Is everything secure up there?" "Send them up," Tom replied. "We have a confession and a suspect ready for arrest." Derek's face crumbled as he realized the full scope of his situation. The police had been coordinating with Tom throughout our planning process, and Derek's confession had been recorded by multiple devices. Derek Walsh. Sheriff Martinez announced as he entered the station with 2 deputies. "You're under arrest for conspiracy kidnapping, child endangerment fraud, and attempted murder." As the handcuffs closed around Derek's wrists, he looked at me with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "You've destroyed everything," he said bitterly. "Our family will never recover from this." "No, Derek," I replied quietly. You destroyed everything when you decided Emma and I were acceptable losses for your financial problems. The family will recover just fine without you." Emma emerged from Tom's truck as Derek was being loaded into the police vehicle. She had been listening to the entire confrontation through Tom's radio system. "Daddy, will Uncle Derek go to jail?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart. Uncle Derek made very bad choices, and now he has to face the consequences." But Derek's arrest was only the beginning of the justice Emma and I deserved. 6 months later, I stood in the same family courtroom where Derek had planned to steal custody of Emma, watching him receive his sentence for multiple felony convictions. The judge's words carried the weight of absolute justice. "Derek Walsh, this court finds you guilty of conspiracy kidnapping, child endangerment fraud, and attempted murder." Judge Patricia Hawkins announced, "Your actions represent a calculated attempt to destroy your own family for financial gain. The court sentences you to 15 years in state prison with possibility of parole after 8 years." Derek showed no emotion as the sentence was read. The gambling addiction and financial desperation that had driven him to attempt murder had been replaced by empty resignation. His wife, Marissa, sat in the back of the courtroom, their twin boys nowhere to be seen. She had filed for divorce the day after Derek's arrest. Emma squeezed my hand as we watched Derek being led away in shackles. My daughter had testified bravely during the trial, helping the jury understand the emotional impact of being abandoned in the wilderness by family members she had trusted completely. "Is it over now, Daddy?" Emma whispered. "Yes, sweetheart, it's over." But Derek's conviction was only part of the healing process our family needed. My parents sat 2 rows behind us, their faces etched with guilt and sorrow. In the months since Derek's arrest, they had struggled to understand how thoroughly he had manipulated them. Derek had convinced them that I was planning to move Emma out of state and cut off family contact, playing on their fears of losing their granddaughter to justify the camping trip abandonment. "We should have known," my mother had said during one of our difficult reconciliation conversations. Derek always presented problems along with solutions. "We thought we were protecting Emma, but we were helping him destroy you." My father had been even more devastated by the revelation that Derek had been stealing money from their business partnership for months before the camping trip. The company that 3 generations of Walsh men had built together was now under investigation for Derek's fraudulent transactions. After the sentencing hearing, we gathered at Tom Bradley's house for a celebration dinner he had insisted on hosting. Tom had become like a grandfather to Emma, teaching her wilderness skills, and helping her understand that the forest was a place of beauty rather than abandonment. "Emma, show your dad what you learned about fire building," Tom suggested as we sat on his back deck overlooking the same mountain range where our nightmare had unfolded. Emma demonstrated the friction fire technique Tom had taught her, producing actual flame from dry wood and patience. Watching her master skills that could save her life filled me with pride and confidence about her future resilience. If someone ever tried to leave me in the woods again, I could take care of myself now, Emma said matter-of-factly. "No one will ever leave you anywhere again," I promised her. "But yes, now you know you can handle almost anything." Sandra joined us for dinner, marking how dramatically our post-divorce relationship had improved. Derek's conspiracy had backfired completely regarding Emma's custody. When Sandra learned that Derek had attempted to manipulate her into supporting a fraudulent custody case, she had not only withdrawn her petition for full custody, but actually requested that I maintain primary custody with increased visitation for her. "Derek showed me text messages he claimed you had sent," Sandra explained to Emma. "Messages saying your daddy was planning to take you away from all of us." I was so scared that I agreed to help Derek without thinking clearly about what he was really doing. Emma, wise beyond her 10 years, simply nodded. Uncle Derek told lots of lies to lots of people. The financial resolution had been equally satisfying. Derek's conviction required him to pay full restitution for the money he had stolen from our family business. His house cars and remaining assets were liquidated to compensate his victims. The inheritance money from Aunt Martha was fully restored to me along with damages for the emotional trauma Derek had inflicted. But more importantly, the crisis had taught Emma and me lessons about family loyalty and trust that would protect us for the rest of our lives. "Daddy, how do you know who to trust?" Emma had asked during one of our many conversations about Derek's betrayal. "You watch how people treat others when they think no one is looking," I had explained. "You notice whether their actions match their words over time. And you remember that real family protects and supports each other, especially during difficult times." Tom Bradley had become the example of what real family looked like. Despite having no blood relationship to us, he had risked his own safety to help us seek justice. He had opened his home to strangers and treated Emma with the patience and affection of a devoted grandfather. "Tom, you saved our lives," I said during dinner. "Not just from the wilderness, but from Derek's plan to destroy our future." "You saved your own lives," Tom replied. "I just provided backup. You kept Emma safe, you preserved the evidence, and you made the hard decisions that kept both of you alive until help could arrive." As the evening wound down, Emma fell asleep in Tom's recliner, while we adults discussed the long-term implications of Derek's actions. My parents would need years of therapy to process their guilt about being manipulated into abandoning their son and granddaughter. The family business would recover financially, but might never recover the trust that Derek had shattered. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," I had told my parents. "I can forgive you for being manipulated by Derek, but Emma and I will never again put ourselves in situations where others have that kind of control over our safety." My mother had wept when she understood that their relationship with Emma would be forever changed by their choices during the camping trip. They would see her regularly and maintain their role as grandparents, but the unconditional trust Emma had once given them was gone. "How do we rebuild that?" my father had asked. "Oh, slowly," I had replied. "By proving through your actions that Emma's safety and well-being matter more to you than family loyalty or Derek's lies." Now, 6 months later, that rebuilding process was showing genuine progress. My parents had attended family therapy sessions, cooperated fully with the criminal investigation, and demonstrated their commitment to Emma's security through consistent, loving behavior. As I carried Emma from Tom's recliner to my truck for the drive home, she stirred and looked up at me sleepily. "Daddy, I'm glad Uncle Derek's lies didn't work." "Me too, sweetheart. Do you think he'll ever say he's sorry?" I considered how to answer honestly. People like Derek rarely apologize because that would mean admitting they were wrong. But whether he apologizes or not doesn't matter. What matters is that we're safe. We're together, and we've learned how to protect ourselves. The drive home took us past the turnoff for the camping area where our ordeal had begun. Emma noticed the sign and pointed it out. "We should go back there sometime," she said. "But with Tom and with better supplies." Her suggestion showed me how completely she had healed from the trauma. The wilderness was no longer a place of abandonment and fear for Emma. It was simply another environment she could master with proper preparation and trustworthy companions. "We'll do that," I promised. "This summer we'll go back with Tom and show that place it couldn't break us." At home that night, as I tucked Emma into her own bed, surrounded by her stuffed animals and familiar belongings, she asked me one final question. "Daddy, what's the most important thing you learned from everything that happened?" I thought carefully before answering. "I learned that real family is not always the people you share blood with. Real family is people who protect you, support you, and stand by you when times are difficult. Tom Bradley is more family to us than Derek ever was." Emma nodded seriously. "And I learned that even when bad things happen, if you're smart and brave, you can make them turn out okay." "That's exactly right," I said, kissing her forehead. "You were incredibly smart and brave through everything." As I turned off her bedroom light, Emma called out one more time, "Daddy, I love our family, the real family." "I love our family too, sweetheart. Sleep well." Standing in the hallway outside Emma's room, I reflected on how completely our lives had transformed. Derek's attempt to destroy us had actually made us stronger, more self-reliant, and more appreciative of genuine relationships. The inheritance money from Aunt Martha was now invested in Emma's education fund, and a small business I had started providing cybersecurity consulting to other small companies. The experience of being betrayed by Derek had taught me the value of financial independence and the importance of never again being vulnerable to family manipulation. Tom Bradley remained a constant presence in our lives, joining us for holidays and teaching Emma skills that connected her to the natural world rather than fearing it. My parents continued their slow journey back into our trust, proving their commitment through consistency rather than dramatic gestures. Sandra and I had developed a co-parenting relationship built on mutual respect and Emma's best interests rather than post-divorce resentment. The crisis had shown both of us how quickly family dynamics could become toxic when people prioritized their own interests over children's welfare. Most importantly, Emma was thriving. The 10-year-old who had been abandoned in the wilderness had become a confident 12-year-old who understood her own strength and worth. She excelled in school, maintained friendships built on honesty rather than convenience, and approached challenges with the knowledge that she could handle whatever life presented. Derek remained in prison, having exhausted his appeals, and settled into serving his sentence. Occasionally, Emma would ask about him, but with curiosity rather than pain. Uncle Derek had become a cautionary tale about what happens when people choose greed over love, lies over truth, and selfishness over family responsibility. Sometimes people make choices that hurt other people, I had explained to Emma. When that happens, there are consequences. Derek chose to try to hurt us, so now he faces the consequences of that choice. That's how justice works. The story of our survival and Derek's conviction had somehow made its way into local newspapers and eventually to a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell our story. Emma and I had declined interviews, preferring to let our recovery speak for itself, rather than reliving the trauma for public consumption. But the documentary did serve one useful purpose. It helped other families recognize warning signs of financial manipulation and conspiracy within their own relationships. Several people contacted us to share their own stories of family members who had used emotional blackmail or elaborate schemes to steal inheritance money or gain custody of children. "We're not the only family this has happened to," Emma observed after reading some of the letters we received. "No, we're not," I agreed. "But we might be one of the few families where the bad guy got caught and punished." That distinction filled me with deep satisfaction. Derek's plan had been sophisticated and might have succeeded against a less prepared victim. But he had underestimated both my determination to protect Emma and my capacity for strategic thinking under pressure. The wilderness experience had taught me that survival requires both physical resilience and mental clarity. In the months that followed, I applied those same principles to rebuilding our lives, clear thinking about priorities, strategic planning for long-term security, and unwavering focus on Emma's well-being above all other considerations. Standing in my home surrounded by evidence of the life Emma and I had built together, I realized that Derek had unknowingly given us an extraordinary gift. By forcing us to depend entirely on each other and our own resourcefulness, he had created an unbreakable bond between Emma and me. By revealing the difference between genuine family loyalty and manipulative exploitation, he had taught us to value authentic relationships over convenient ones. The man who had tried to destroy us had actually made us stronger, wiser, and more appreciative of the good people in our lives. That irony seemed like perfect justice. As I write this story now, 3 years after Derek's conviction, Emma is 15 and preparing for high school. She plans to study environmental science and has already been accepted to a summer wilderness program that Tom Bradley recommended. The girl who was abandoned in the forest now sees the natural world as a place of learning and adventure, rather than fear. She carries herself with the confidence of someone who has survived genuine crisis and emerged stronger. When classmates complain about minor disappointments or family conflicts, Emma listens with patience but maintains perspective about what constitutes real problems versus temporary inconveniences. Most people don't know how strong they are until they have to be strong, she told me recently. We know that knowledge is perhaps the most valuable inheritance I can give her. Have you ever faced a situation where family members betrayed your trust? How did you rebuild relationships after discovering that people you loved had conspired against you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your experiences might help other families recognize warning signs before they reach crisis points. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others find it. Subscribe to hear more stories about families who overcame betrayal and manipulation through courage and strategic thinking. Share this video with anyone who might benefit from understanding how conspiracy and manipulation work within families and how justice can prevail when victims refuse to remain silent. Thank you for listening to our story. Remember that real family protects and supports each other, especially during the darkest times. Trust your instincts, document suspicious behavior, and never hesitate to seek help when you feel threatened or manipulated. Stay strong, stay smart, and never give up fighting for the people you love.